Hi, welcome to day two. Very exciting. Day two is just a small primer on design as a problem solving tool. So, the first thing that I think about when I think about design is all of the quotes around it, and that so many people think that design is making things look pretty instead of making things fundamentally useful. And there was a quote that went around a lot in the design world before I got interested in design, but is still really prevalent, is that design is thinking made visual. And I think that it's not necessarily that thinking is made visual in the process of design. I think that design is thinking made real, made tangible into rich and cohesive experiences, into businesses, into products, and hopefully even into industries, which is part of this project. And I think that design is about making things real for the benefit of humanity, because humans are using those things that are designed, whether they're designed for ecological reasons, like land bridges for wild animals, or if they're designed like a chair for me to use in a utilitarian kind of way. And then there's also an aesthetic that you can put on top, which is what most people think design is. Like the International Council of Design says that design is a disciplined study and practice focused on the interaction between a person and a user and a man-made environment, taking into account aesthetics and functionality and contextual and cultural and societal considerations. And I think that it's not necessarily just in a man-made environment, because it could be that you're designing an interaction to work well. And I think that that can get really, really interesting. So, first thing I kind of want to talk about today, besides that kind of quotations, and that design is really about thinking, it's not about making things beautiful, although we do want them to be beautiful and useful at the end if we can. Um, but when like my work is so much industrial side of design, so we're not necessarily designing it to be as beautiful as we are designing it to be safe and useful. So there's always trade-offs either way. And the when I first got interested in design was when I started working with product and developing products when I first came back ashore from being at sea. And at that time, I started taking courses from the Interaction Design Foundation, which you can find online. There's lots and lots of courses that they have. And it's like one price per month, and you can take as many courses as you want. And the Interaction Design Foundation says the design thinking process is split up into three parts. It's split up into the phase of inspiration, then the phase of ideation, and then the phase of implementation. And those phases are followed by like mini phases inside each other, and all of them cycle back, because you have inspiration, and then you kind of create a prototype, and then you try to implement it, and then you learn something and you're inspired again, and you go back through the process many, many times. And the way IDEO talks about it is they talk about it as the phases of hearing, creating, and delivering, which in a way I prefer to the Interaction Design Foundation's way of inspiring ideation and implementation, because you can deliver experiences, you don't necessarily implement them. And I think that it's a better thought process for me to go on the IDEO side of it than to go on the Interaction Design Foundation side of it. But I think that it's personal preference, and it depends on the fineness of language and how you look at it. And then there was another really interesting thing about design thinking as a problem solving tool. It's kind of a memorable quote as well from Janine Lenka at the Darden Business School. And that's what is, what if, what wows, and what works. And part of this is, okay, who are we looking at in the design process? Who is this for? And then what challenges are we trying to solve? Who do those people are? Who are they? And then what challenges do they have? And then how will they use this either physical thing or a process that we're designing or a business model that we're designing or what have you? And then how will that affect them? What would wow them? What would be their ultimate experience of that? And I think that when we're looking at the industry as a whole, we have to look at what would be the end result that we would like to have for all of the different people that are working within the ocean space. What would be the ideal thing that we could build there together? What would be the interactions between all of the people inside the ocean space? How would we use that for the betterment of humanity? So those are the things that I wanted to kind of touch on today. Tomorrow, we have a great guest who was actually one of the first people introducing me to design process when I started working with automation products at Kongsberg. And he is the Chief Experience Officer at Eggs Design here in Oslo. And so he's going to join me on the call tomorrow at 3. So I actually made a little event. And we're going to talk about his journey with design and how he uses design to solve these bigger problems, moving from the design of objects, which was originally what design processes and design thinking was for, into designing experiences, which is often done now. And people talk about customer experience design and user experience design and stakeholder experience design. And then moving that into business model design, which is something that is talked about a lot by the major consulting firms. So like McKinsey had a lot of articles on business design and designing your business. And then moving that into a space where I don't think it's necessarily been tried, but I do hope it will work, is designing industries together with many stakeholders. And I got really interested in that problem when I started working with business clusters, and clusters like SAMS, which is looking at sustainable autonomous mobility and how that can really affect the world and making that new industry and how it will interact with other industries. So I think that we have some really interesting problems here. I'd like to thank the people that reached out to me yesterday. I will get to the private messages that I got, and some people sent me some really interesting leads. Yesterday, I was also in London for some workshops and had some really interesting emails sent to me about human factors that I haven't necessarily been able to get through yet. But I really hope that through engaging together, we can learn from each other and really try to create a better world. It's only day 2, so got a long way to go, but it should be really interesting. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for following. And we'll talk again tomorrow.